Hello, everyone. A very good day to all of you. First things first, thank you very much for uh, joining us in this webinar. For those of you who have joined this webinar, I wish you all good health and happiness because I think that's the need of the hour. Um, Even before I move any forward with this webinar, let me actually perform a quick audio video check. I just wanted to make sure that my audio is loud and clear and you all can see my screen. So if you can, then please let us know via the chat window. A quick yes would be highly appreciated. Just a couple of yeses and we'll move forward. All right, fantastic. Thank you so very much. I see a lot of yeses, in fact. Awesome. All right. Now, a quick disclaimer, even before I move any forward with my session. Now that we are working from home, at least most of us are working from home, there are certain things that that are beyond your control when you're working from home. And one such thing for me is my neighbor's dog that has been barking for the last 25, 30 minutes. The dog doesn't understand the fact that people are working from home and people do webinars from home. It should be silent. No, it doesn't give anything for that. It's been barking for quite some time, so please excuse the background noise if you hear any. All right, and we'll do our best to keep it light. We'll give you valuable information, and then we'll leave you free. So we have two sessions for today. The first session will be handled by me, which will be around hybrid Active Directory, managing hybrid Active Directory. And that's going to be for anywhere between 45 to 50 minutes. And the second session is going to be handled by another presenter, in fact, my good friend and colleague, Sharda. And Sharda is going to be talking about password best practices, authentication techniques, and how do you improve security if at all you are going to implement self-service password management for your users, right? So that's going to be the two topics that we'll be covering for today's session. Let's move ahead, all right? If you want to make a note of my email address, it's right there on the screen. It's vivin.ks@manageengine.com. A quick introduction about myself, what qualifies me to host this webinar. My name, as you can see on the screen, is Vivin Satyan, and I work as a technical consultant in the Active Directory team of AD Solutions. I've been with Manage Engine for 8 years now. I do two things as a technical consultant. One is I used to travel the world even before everything, even before the virus began to take its rounds. So I used to do that for taking part in seminars and conferences hosted by Manage Engine across the globe. And the second thing that I do is I implement some of the Active Directory and IT security solutions that we have in small, medium, and large enterprises. Now, doing these two things, I get to interact with people like you in the IT field. When I say people like you, I'm referring to the IT technicians, the IT administrators, the IT directors. Now, you give me some of your problem. It's always going to be a two-way learning experience. It's not about me speaking all the time. So you give me some of your problems. You come up with questions like, hey, Vivin, what can we do to better audit the activity of our users? What can we do to manage our group policy? Now, how do we audit a hybrid Active Directory, both on-prem as well as your Azure from a single console, so on and so forth. Now, we, from a company standpoint, we have few solutions that we can help, which we have built to help our customers. We actually share them with you. So that's pretty much what we do in AD Solutions, building solutions to help IT technicians, IT administrators to manage as well as secure your Active Directory, Azure, as well as your Office 365 infrastructure. That's pretty much it. Now for this session, I have 4 topics. First, I have some reports that I want you to be doing in your Active Directory infrastructure. If you have Office 365, if you have Exchange, if you have on-prem Active Directory, I want you to do certain default reports because I think the reports that I'm going to be sharing fits organizations of all sizes, small, medium, and large, irrespective of what sector you are into, healthcare, education, finance, it doesn't matter. So the first win will be about reports, few reports that I want you to trigger, that I want you to run in your infrastructure. Second, improve standardization when it comes to managing objects. Now, what do I mean by improve standardization? Uh, as a part of my job, I visit organizations for consultations. And when I walk into an organization for consultation, one of the things that I do is I try to see whether the objects in their AD as well as in their Office 365 infrastructure are following a bit of a standard. Now, why should objects in Active Directory be created or be managed with a standard is to have some sort of uniformity and integrity in place. Let me give you a quick example to better explain my point. So when you take two users belonging to the same department, you do not want them to have different permission levels. Okay, that's a very simple example of lack of standardization, right? And then you have n number of examples relating to lack of standardization. So how do you bring in some sort of standardization with a tool, right? In your AD as well as in your Office 365 infrastructure, both while creating them or while modifying them or while deprovisioning the accounts? How do you bring in a uniform format? Third, automation. Now, when you do certain things in Active Directory and Office 365 on a regular basis, for example, you create users, when our users leave the organization, you'll have to deprovision the accounts, remove their licenses, make sure that they do not have access to critical resources in your infrastructure. So when you have to do certain things on a regular basis, why not automate the process, right? When I say automate, I'm not suggesting that you just automate and then let it take control. No, I'm talking about controlled automation, whereas you will basically have the command over an automation. If you do not want the automation to disturb certain accounts, you can very well go ahead and hit the kill switch, or you can even modify the automation schedule and then let it run. And the last part is Active Directory is no longer just about the administrators. So it is about your HR, it is about your helpless technicians. You have your security auditors coming in once in every year for auditing and so on and so forth. Now there arises the basic need of delegating things to other users. Now the delegation model that I'm going to be talking about in this session is about a non-intrusive delegation model. Let me repeat, a non-intrusive delegation model. And how is it any different how is it any different from adding a user to a group or using the delegation of control wizard? Well, the difference is if you are adding a user to a group for that user to get reset password or let's say unlock account privileges, you are basically increasing the user's privilege in Active Directory. And the same holds good for Office 365. You want a user to do something, you assign the user a role in Office 365. Now, those two models are what I call as intrusive delegation models. Now, I'm all in for intrusive delegation if it's for the administrators, because the administrators anyways have the keys to your kingdom. But I'm not game for the intrusive delegation model for your HR, for your helpless technicians. So let's try to keep the privilege to a bare minimum, or taking things one step further, let's call it the least privilege model for your HR and for your helpless technicians. But you still have to get things done from them. So how do you perform a non-intrusive delegation for all your HRs and for your helpless technicians to get things done in AD, in Office 365 and Exchange? All right. Now, has Microsoft given us tools to perform all those four operations, which I just mentioned: reporting, bringing in standardization, automation, and delegation? Has Microsoft given us tools? Yes, Microsoft has given us powerful tools, right? Some of these tools are right there on the screen for you. PowerShell, you have your Active Directory users and computers, you have Exchange Management Console, etc., etc. And if you take a closer look at the tools that I have displayed on the screen, you would notice one thing here, okay? The Office 365 Admin Center from Microsoft is the first ever tool from the company that came out with a proper graphical user interface. Okay? We do not have a graphical user interface for managing our on-prem objects. We had the Active Directory users and computers, but that's not a GUI. right? We had Exchange Management Console for managing our Exchange mailboxes, remote mailboxes, linked mailboxes, but that's not a GUI again. And talking about Event Viewer is a tool, is a very powerful tool that holds some very important audit trails. It basically has answers for who, what, when, and where. If you need to know who did what, you have the answer in the Event Viewer. But again, Event Viewer is not a proper graphical user interface. Now, the point that I'm trying to drive is some tools have a GUI, some tools don't. The challenge that I see with the native tools is, number one, the confirmation messages that you get with the tools aren't very helpful, especially when it comes to failures. An example, if you're creating 3 user accounts with a PowerShell script, okay, both in AD, Exchange, and even Office 365 for that matter. The 2 user accounts were created perfectly fine with all the attributes that you want, the right Office 365 license, let's call it the E5 license, and you created an Exchange mailbox, a 2019 Exchange mailbox for the user with a script, right? 2 user accounts were created perfectly fine. 1 user account failed for some reason. And please remember you're using a script, okay? Now the error message that you get for the failure is not going to be very helpful for troubleshooting or finding the fact of what went wrong. That's the problem that I see with some of the native tools, okay? I'm not trying to belittle PowerShell, or I'm not trying to belittle the technology as such. All I'm saying is there are some challenges, and the technology is almost 20 years old, and we still have those challenges even today, relevant even today. Now, the second challenge that I see is consolidating information from various platforms. If you have any one of these, then you're talking about toggling between multiple windows, okay? You are talking about a PowerShell script for retrieving information from AD. You're talking about your Exchange Management Console for retrieving information from Exchange. And then you have the Admin Center, okay? And if you have Skype, well, we have another platform for that, okay? And the ability to delegate all these platforms or all these consoles to non-admin users is not something that you can overlook because of 2 reasons. The learning curve involved is something that you cannot overlook, and it is also a bit of a time-consuming process, right? It is a course by itself. That's the right way to put it. It's a course by itself. Now, administrators, or in other words, technicians, are still left with the basic task of organizing Active Directory, bringing some sort of standardization, okay? Not just your on-prem AD, this holds good for your Exchange as well as for your O365. So how do we get this done in one single pane of glass, or using one single pane of glass? Now, we in the AD Solutions team of ManageEngine came up with one solution called AD Manager Plus almost 13 years ago. We started off with a tool for managing the on-prem infrastructure, and we evolved. We kept adding features, and now AD Manager Plus is no longer just a solution for managing your on-prem infrastructure. It can help you manage Office 365. It can help you manage Exchange. It can help you get reports. It can help you delegate, and also at the same time automate certain tasks in and out of Active Directory and all other platforms that I just mentioned. All right, a disclaimer here, okay? I'm not assuming that all of you are users of AD Manager Plus, right? You might be using a different tool, or you might be using PowerShell. That's perfectly fine. The use cases that I'm about to share with you over the next 30 to 40 minutes can still be held good for in any platform that you use or any tool that you use. Even if you're using another tool from another vendor, that's perfectly fine. All I want you to see is, please see whether you can probably take away 4 or 5 action items from what we are going to discuss today and put it to use in your tool. That's all I want, right? All right, so I have 4 sections, I told you, and the first section is all about reports, and I have some very interesting reports to share with you. And the first report is related to groups, right? In Active Directory, we have this very important concept called groups, okay? Let me go to my lab setup here. This is my VM. This is my small lab that I have built with approximately 100 or 150 users. That's it. Nothing more, nothing much. Now, in this lab setup, what I'm about to show you here is a report that I want you to do with regards to groups. Now, when it comes to groups in Active Directory, there are two kinds of reports that I want you to generate. The first report that I'm about to share with you is for an investigation, right? An investigation an investigation approach, I'm sorry, with regards to groups. And the second report is something related to a group health check. Let me explain what that is. Okay, the first report, an investigation with regards to groups. Now you see that in my lab, I have this technician called helpdesk-us account. Now this specific account in my lab, if you take a look at the technician, I'll quickly open up the group membership of this user account, right? You see that the user is part of a couple of groups: account creation, domain users, password reset and account unlock, SQL basic access, and VPN access. Now, these are some of the basic groups that I have added this technician to. Now, from the name of these groups, okay, from the way that I've designed these groups, you can very well understand that none of these groups have the ability to disable or delete users in my Active Directory infrastructure, not just in AD, but also in Office 365. No. Now that I have the habit of delegating actions to other users, I'm following a group-based delegation model here. Now that I have the habit of delegating actions to other users, I also have the habit of, auditing the actions done by my technicians. So I'd like to audit the actions done by my helpdesk-us account. So I track the activities of these users once every week. So on Monday morning, let's say at 9 o'clock or 9:30, I always receive an email that has a PDF attachment, and that PDF attachment is nothing but the audit report of my technicians, okay, for the last 7 days. Now, one such report tells me that the selected technician, the helpdesk-us technician, has disabled 2 accounts in Active Directory and deleted 1 of them. Now, according to the definition of the groups, none of these users, none of these groups have disable or delete rights. Now, I'll have to start my investigation. And how do I start my investigation? Let me give you a simple tip, which I'm assuming all of you know this, but it's worth repeating, right? Now, the groups that you see under the member of tab of this user account are nothing but the direct groups of this user, right? Account creation, domain users, password reset, SQL basic access, VPN access. All these are what I call the direct groups of this user. You have another set of groups in Active Directory which you call the nested groups, right? And what are nested groups? Well, if one of these groups are nested or is nested to a group in Active Directory that has disable and delete rights, what happens is this user gets that right, not directly, but through inappropriate nesting. You get my point? So it's very important that we understand the direct group membership of the user. But what is even more important is we need to understand whether there are such inappropriate group nestings. What if the VPN access group is linked to a group that has disable and delete rights, right? We need to know that. This is the investigative approach from a user's standpoint. Let me quickly show the report. Again, I just want you to count the number of direct groups that this user is a member of. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 direct groups. Let's do this query in a nested manner and see whether we have any such additional groups popping up. I'm not going to use a PowerShell here. I just use AD Manager Plus, right? This is the UI of AD Manager Plus. A quick introduction. We'll be able to manage, report, delegate, implement a business workflow, automate things that you want. You can even take backup of your Active Directory objects. That includes your GPO and your DNS and whatnot, right? All right, let's start our investigation. So I'm just going to the reporting section of AD Manager Plus. All the reports are categorized for your convenience, right? You have the categories here in the left pane, and you also have a search box to make things even more easier, right? If you're not quite sure about the name of the report, you just type in the keyword and you get all related reports for that keyword, right? Now, the report that I'm going to generate for my investigation is right here. You see the topic? The category of this report is nested reports. Okay? And I have 2 categories for nested. So I have users in groups. I have groups for users. 2 ways, right? For my first investigation, I'd like to do the second report, which is groups for users, because I really like to know the groups that the helpdesk-us user is a member of, not just direct, but also nested. So I just go to groups for users, right? I've already selected the account, so I'm not just going to repeat it again. You can select one user, or you can even select multiple users. Let me quickly show this to you. So this is a checkbox. This is not a radio button, so you can just go ahead and select as many users as you want. And all I want you to do is, I just want you to select the target user, hit generate, and just wait for the report to complete. Now, once again, let me quickly take you back to the groups of this user. We had 5 groups here, direct groups, okay? And if you do the same, if you target the same user with a nested query, not just the direct query, you don't get 5 groups, okay? The same user. How many groups do we have here? Okay, we have 10 groups in total. So we are talking about additional 5 nested groups. And if you'd like to know what are the nested groups associated with the selected user, very simple. You scroll down. You have 3 or 4 columns right here. However, you can add more columns by hitting the add or remove columns button. But this is all we need, right? If you take a closer look at the VPN access group, okay? The VPN access group was a direct group membership of this user. Let me quickly show this to you. Member of, you have the VPN access group right here, okay? Now, if you take a look at the report, the VPN access group is directly linked to the application admin IT day, a custom group, which is again a high privilege group. And then you have the default high privilege group, which is the domain admins. Now, if you take a look at domain admins is also in turn a member of 3 other groups, okay? Which one of those groups is a very high privilege group called the administrators right here. Now, what this means is you have some cleaning up to do with regards to this user, okay? You don't want this user account to be a member of domain admins, not direct, not nested, because this is just a helpless technician. I don't want domain admins rights to be vested on a helpless user, okay? So you can go ahead and select these checkboxes and remove the inappropriate groups from this user, or just use the more actions button here and select any action that you want, right? This is the first report that I wanted to share with you. A nested groups for users report whenever you have a question, and the question is, how did this user get that right, okay? If you ever had to ask yourself the question, how did a user X get that right when you have not given him or her the privilege, the answer would more often than not be in this report, the groups for users. If the additional privilege is vested in terms of groups, in terms of group nesting, inappropriate group nesting, right? Now, you will not be using this report on a daily basis. You would be using this report only when you have to find out how did user X get that right, okay? Is he part of any other irrelevant groups, okay? Now, there is another report that I want you to do once in every 15 days. This is something that I call as a group health check that I suggest for all the administrators that I have a conversation with. Okay, you have another category called as group reports right here. If you remember, the earlier report that I shared with you was from a user's perspective. You selected a user and then you found out the actual groups for the user, direct plus nested, right? Now this report, the group health check report, if you go to the group reports category, you have something called detailed group members. Now this report is not from a user standpoint, this is from a group standpoint, right? So you can select your top level admin groups. It can be domain admins, schema admins, enterprise admins, or even your custom application group, that doesn't matter. You can select any top level group that you want and see whether these top level groups are in touch with your basic users, basic groups, basic computers or contacts. You do not want basic users or basic objects to be part of domain admins, right? That's the point that I'm trying to convey. So what I've done here is I've selected domain admins and I'm going to fetch the users that are part of domain admins, groups, computers, and contacts that have any contact with domain admin, not just direct, but also in a nested manner. So let's generate, right? Now, the object that we are most interested in to know about is not the users, right? However, we have the result right here. If you take a closer look at the report, you have 5 tabs. You have the users tab, groups, computers, contacts, and the all objects tab. You have 11 users belonging to domain admins, right? So you have all the 11 users listed here. But what is even more important to me from this report is to understand whether my domain admins is a member of or is in contact with some of my basic groups in Active Directory. I do not want that to happen. So I go to groups, and then in the group section, I see that the domain admins is in contact with the intern basic access group. This is a serious mistake. And the VPN access group, this is a blunder, okay? So I, just by generating a report targeting my domain admins, I now understand that 2 basic groups, 2 basic security groups in my Active Directory infrastructure are in touch with domain admins. So this is something that I'll have to clean up. This is what I call as a group health check. You are checking whether your top level high privileged groups are in proper shape, are in contact with only the appropriate users, okay? In any given time and day, you'll have to ensure that when you run a query against your top level groups, you should not be having any basic groups getting listed here. The basic group should be 0, okay? Now that we have 2, I have 2 things to remove, right? This is one other report that I wanted to share with you, okay? The first one was from a user's perspective. The detailed group members report was from a group's perspective. I hope I've made myself clear. All right. Okay. Now, why should you generate the detailed group members report? One classic use case would be, well, if you take a look at the default groups in your Active Directory infrastructure that have the ability to log on to domain controllers, you have 6 default groups, right, that can log into your domain controller. So if you are a member of the backup operators group, you'll be able to log into the domain controllers, right? So it is very crucial that we understand the severity of this when this is mishandled, right? That's why I always suggest a group health check once in every 15 days. You need not manually run this report, just go ahead and schedule it and receive a report once in every 15 days. I think this is worth doing. All right. Now, the second category, the first one was about groups. The second category of reports is something related to shared folders. And let me jump to my lab setup to quickly give you my shared folder structure here. So I have this shared folder called corp data. Okay? According to me, corp data is kind of important, and I want corp data to be accessible only by a specific security group, which I have named it as the finance managers group. I don't want any members outside the finance managers group having access to corp data, right? Now, when you have such important shared folders, which you want to be accessible only by an intended audience, you might want to perform a shared folder health check as well, okay? So we are talking about different kinds of health checks here. One is group health check, and the other one is shared folder health check. Now, this health check, all I want you to do is just pick your top 10 or 20 folders in your infrastructure. I'm not saying do this for every folder. Pick your top 10 or 15 folders and do this exercise once in every 15 days, right? It's worth doing again. All I want you to do is see whether a specific folder, a target folder, is still accessible by the right audience, okay? You do not want this information, especially if it's confidential, to be floating around your organization. You don't want that. So I'm going to do a right click here. I'm going to go to properties. I'm going to go to security, hoping to find only one security group in the entry list. If I go to security, I have finance managers right here, which is the right group that I want. But if you take a closer look at the other groups or users, I have Vivin, I have administrators, I have creator owner, default entities, and I have everyone. The last item that I've highlighted, the everyone item, is a serious mistake, especially if that folder is kind of important. I'm not saying that this is the case in every infrastructure. All I'm saying is this: what if this is the case? What are you going to do? Okay? How are you going to clean up the permissions on important folders, in my case, corp data? And I'm not willing to remove this one by one. I'm not just going to select everyone, edit or remove. I'm not going to select system, edit, remove. No, that's time consuming and that's ineffective. You know why it is ineffective? If you remove an entry from here, you're just removing an entry from the top level folder. Now, what if this top level folder has child folders or subfolders? And what if these subfolders have, subfolders inside them? And what if the inheritance is set to true in certain folders? And what if it is set to false in certain other folders? Right? That's going to be a bit tricky. So we will have to first we'll have to do two things here when you're trying to perform a shared folder health check, okay? And what are those two action items? It is a two-step process, okay? So step one is you'll have to review the permissions. So when I say review the permissions, in my case, when I say review the permissions of carp data, I'm not just talking about carp data. I'm talking about all the 50 odd folders that I have inside of carp data, right? That's step number one. Now, step number two is performing a cleanup. When you are reviewing permissions for more than 50 folders and you find certain inappropriate entry on some of those folders, how are you going to clean that up in one shot? Not one by one, in one shot. So these two are very important. And it's highly ineffective if you try to do this manually, because we are talking about 50 folders. You'll have to get the report done at least 50 times if you're doing this manually, right? Step one, review. Step two, cleanup. Let's do step one with AD Manager Plus, right? Jump to my lab. The folder is corp data, and I'm going to do step one here, which is reviewing permissions on corp data, not just on this folder, all the 50 folders that are inside of corp data in one shot. Again, go to reports, right? We're talking about more than 200 reports here. So the report that I'm interested in right now is NTFS reports. And then you go to permission for folders, okay? So you have four types of NTFS reports: shares in servers, permission for folders, folders accessible by accounts. If you want to target a specific user and then want to know what level of permissions you have, you have it right here. And if you want to find out whether you have non-inheritable folders, folders that do not inherit permission from the parent folder, you can do this report. But for our share folder health check, in order to complete step number one, which is review, I'm going to go for permission for folders, right? So I go to permission for folders. I select corp data. I've already done that. I've selected corp data, and I have no idea whether the corp data has one subfolder or 50 subfolder or 70 subfolders. I have no idea. So if I know the number of subfolders, yes, I can just go ahead and define them. I can even do a custom level here of the number of subfolders. But I have no idea whether corp data has 1 or 50. So I'm just going to do it for all subfolders here. And I can further refine my result by using filters. Okay, I go to refine result. If I'd like to be shown only certain things, let's say inherited permissions or hidden folders, I can even do that. Right? Or if I want to exclude certain things in order to reduce noise, I can even do that as well. After defining your filters, I want you to just go ahead and hit generate. Okay, this is step number one. Please notice that we are just doing step number one, not just on one folder, but on all the subfolders that I have under one selected main share, which is the corp data. Okay, this is just step number one, and I'll take you to step number two after the report is complete. All right, now it looks like I have more than 400 or 500 objects in one specific tree. I told you this is not just targeting one folder, this is targeting all the subfolders in this specific share. So it's going to take some time for it to complete. But after the report is complete, we'll be able to understand the permissions in its entirety. Now the report is complete. Now please take a look at this. So you have a folder and you know who has access to the folder along with inheritance. And if it's a group, you also get the members of the group, right? One report giving you such details is what we are talking about. Again, you do not do a PowerShell, you do not use ADUC, you are using one simple graphical user interface and you're just clicking some buttons, that's it, and you get the reports that you want. So you know the permissions, you know which objects does it apply to? Is it just the folder or all the subfolders? And you also get the ACE type here, whether it's an allowed and who's the owner of the folder, so on and so forth. Now, wait a minute. This is the NTFS permission. You also get to know the share permission here, okay? If you go to the share permission, you get to know the share permission from the same report along with the ACE type, okay? Whether it's full control, read, or change. Now, after understanding the permission in its entirety, we are done with step number 1. We now know the level of damage that this folder is under, okay? Now, how do you clean up corp data? How do you ensure that the selected corp data folder is only accessible by finance managers? That is step number 2. So you jump to management, okay? You go to file server management. Now, please note, I've jumped from the reporting tab to the management tab because I'm going to perform step number 2, which is cleanup. I have reviewed the permissions of an NTFS folder and a confidential shared folder. And then I'm going to perform step number 2, which is cleanup, for which I go to file server management, okay? And I can manage file servers, I can manage NTFS, remove NTFS, modify share or remove share permissions. So I have 4 actions right here. Now we are going to modify the existing NTFS permission of corp data. So you see right here, the first click, modify NTFS permission. So you go to modify NTFS permission. The folder that you're trying to clean up is corp data. You simply select that folder. Let me do that for you. Okay. The target folder is inside my file servers. This is my file server. If you open up my file server, you'd be seeing all my shares. All right. You have all my shares right here. And the target share that I'm trying to clean up is corp data. I've done that. I hit OK. Now you have 2 ways of assigning permissions and cleaning up the folder. One, you can select the account to which you'd like to grant access over this folder. Okay, so I can, in my case, it's going to be finance managers. So I can hit the plus sign, select the finance managers group, define what level of permission that should be assigned to them, and also decide whether the permission should be applied to just corp data or all its subfolders, so on and so forth. Okay, I can just keep adding entries if I want to add multiple users and groups. Okay? I can do this. Okay? Or in other words, what I can do here is, in order to make things even more simple, okay, if you like the feature called copy and paste, which by now I'm assuming that most of you like this feature called copy paste, because I like it, because I think it's effective, and it gets things done even more easier in an easier manner instead of manually assigning permissions. You can manually do this, or you can easily copy paste permissions from another folder. So you have something called copy from folder, right? So you just go to copy from folder, and again open up my file server. Now please take a look at my screen. You would see that I have corp data, and just below corp data you have something called corp data backup. Now I have the habit of backing up information, so I have a backup of corp data, and the backup is, and I want the permission to be in a way that is defined in corp data backup. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to copy permissions from the backup and paste it on corp data. This way I clean up the existing permission on the messed up folder and ensure that the right permissions are set. So I select corp data. Okay. A very important part here is, when I select a file share that I'd like to copy permissions from, I should also include the inherited permissions of the folder. Okay. If you don't want to include permissions of the selected folder, you can simply uncheck the checkbox right here. In my case, I'd like to include the inherited permissions as well. So now when I hit OK, you would see a difference in the screen. You see that I have finance managers, administrators, and the objects. And you see that I have the permission levels and everything set by default. I did not do this manually. I copied and pasted. All right. We still have not removed the 100 odd entries that still have access to corp data. And how am I going to remove the 100 odd entries from corp data and all its subfolders? I'm not going to be doing this one by one. That's time consuming. That's ineffective. Please look at the second checkbox right here. Let me read that out for you. Remove all existing permissions on corp data and apply only the above ones, which I've copied right here. So I'm going to do this. I hit OK. When I hit modify, all the permissions on corp data will be wiped out, and only the ones that I've set here will be pasted on corp data. Now tell me, is this effective or not? All right. So what you're doing here is you are basically cleaning up permissions on 50 odd folders in one shot. You're removing permissions of 50 odd folders, and you're deciding who should have access and what level of access should they have. How effective is this? You can even have a quick preview of things if you want to have more control, right? So you get to know all changes, the existing permission on the folder, the new permission which is about to be set, the ones that are modified, and the ones that are removed. After understanding everything, you can then go ahead and hit modify, right? So that's pretty much from the reporting standpoint here, okay? So the first report was something related to groups, and we had two perspectives, and the second report was something related to shared folders in the line. Let me quickly walk you through another item that I have. Okay? Now we are done with reports. Of course, we have another 200 odd reports that you can generate. Just because we're pressed for time, I'm not diving into the details here. And the second topic for my session is around the lines of managing Active Directory objects. Okay. Let me quickly show you what I'm referring to. Right, so let me talk about that. Now, when I talk about managing Active Directory objects, I'm talking about bringing in some sort of standardization while you create users, while you modify them, and also while deleting the users. Okay? Not just in AD, please bear in mind, you create users not in AD, not just in AD, you create Exchange mailboxes. You map Office 365 licenses by creating objects in Office 365. So you'll have to maintain standardization across platforms, right? You'll have to maintain standardization across platforms while modifying accounts. You'll also have to maintain standardization while deleting accounts across platforms, okay? Now, I'll just stick to creation for this session. However, you can apply the same concept for modification and deletion. Now, how do we bring in some sort of standardization while creating accounts? Right. So if you're creating 5 users tomorrow, 5 of them belonging to different departments, different job titles, how do you bring in some sort of standardization? Well, use a uniform framework. And the uniform framework that we have when it comes to provisioning accounts is what we call the template. Okay? Now, there are 3 important things that I want you to understand in this template. There are 3 core features of this template. Oh, before that, please take a look at this. This template is not just for Active Directory. This can provision accounts in Active Directory, in Google Apps, in Office 365, and also create an Exchange mailbox if you want Sky for Business to be managed. Yes. Remote mailbox. Yes. So most of the account provisioning platforms are covered in this layer. Okay? That includes the logon name of your users. How do you want the logon name to be? Is it going to be first name dot last name? Or what if there is a duplicate? What if I have a John Smith and tomorrow another user in the name of John Smith is hired, and I'm now going to create an account for the user in AD, in Exchange, in Office 365. How are duplicates handled? All right, so on and so forth. Everything can be set here in this framework so that it becomes somewhat uniform. And then it becomes a lot easier for you to troubleshoot. So for you to find out what was the initial property of the user, you need not audit anything. All you need to do is just open up a template and then find out. All right. I told you that there are 3 important things that I want to share with you when it comes to user provisioning or when it comes to the specific template. The first thing is something related to copy user attributes. And the second feature is enable drag and drops. And the third one is creation rules. Okay, let me take you to an actual template, because I would like to show you this instead of just sticking to the slide deck, right? Now, if you go to the management tab of AD Manager Plus, you would find the template section, right? You have something called user templates right here. Now, please don't think that we have templates just for creating and modifying accounts or deleting user objects. We also have templates for computers. We have templates for groups. We have templates for contacts. So for all kinds of major objects, yes, we have templates. All right, let's just focus on the user creation templates for now. I open up user creation templates, okay? And I'm just going to use one of my template, right? User creation -HR. Now you notice that there are two templates here, user creation -admin and user creation -HR. Now this is the template that my administrators will be using for creating accounts in AD and other platforms. Whereas this is the template but that my HR will be using while provisioning accounts. All right, so there has to be some sort of difference. These two templates cannot be the same. A HR need not see things that the admin sees when they log into a template, right? So there has to be some sort of customization. I'm about to explain all that. So user creation HR, I'm quickly opening up this template. Now you might notice something, okay? It's only the general tab that is highlighted. The account, contact, exchange, all other tabs are in gray. Now what that means is this layout is somewhat customized, and I'll tell you what customization I've done. I told you that I'm going to be explaining three important features of a template, okay? The first one is copy user attributes. Now, if you're trying to build up a new template today, if you just open up user creation templates, you're trying to build a new template. So let's say one template per department, one for IT, one for sales, one for marketing, and the other one for pre-sales, let's say. All you need to do is just open up a template. Instead of filling these fields manually, you can even do that. You can even create your own format, so on and so forth. Instead of doing this manually, I'll show you one shortcut. Use copy user attributes, right? Let's say I'm trying to build a template for the IT department. So I just go to copy user attributes, okay? And I pick this user belonging to the IT department. So let's say I select a user belonging to the IT, okay? I'm selecting this technician here, IT HDT. I believe this user has the exact properties that I want for an IT user if the user is a technician. So I select this user, I go to select attributes. I can then pick and choose the attributes that I'd like to copy from this user, okay? So I just go ahead and select the attributes that I want for this user. I can do that. That's what I can achieve using copy user attributes. So basically, you are copying properties from an existing user and pasting it on the ones on the template that you're trying to build. If you're trying to build a template for sales, go to copy user attributes, pick a user belonging to the sales department that you deem fit. Okay. If you're trying to build a template for the marketing department, go pick a user here belonging to the marketing department, copy the user's property, paste it to the template. So creating a template shouldn't take you more than 5 minutes because you're just copying the exact user and pasting the values onto the template, right? This is point number one. Point number two, and I'm going to skip this for later. So point number two here is creation rules. Okay? Now, let me tell you something. Rules are nothing but smart logic that you include with the template. So if you just go to creation rules, you can create any number of rules you want. In my case, I've created 2 rules here, okay? Rule 1 and rule 2. Let me explain what these 2 rules are. You can add any number of rules, okay? But let me first explain what these rules are and what they can do. Rule number 1, I'm going to expand it. Every rule has a condition, okay? The condition is the base or is the trigger for the rule. Rule number 1 and the condition is the title is IT admin. If the title is going to be, this is an if condition, right? If the title is IT admin for the user, then I want the user to have a set of properties, which I have defined right here, okay? So I can even define any number of properties that I want right, by selecting the drop-down box. So the condition is the title is IT admin, then the user should have all these properties. This is rule number 1, okay? Let me explain rule number 2. Please note that the title should be IT admin, right? Now, rule number 2 is if the title is IT technician, not an admin, but a technician, then the user should have different set of properties other than what the IT admin should have, right? So we have 2 rules. Similarly, you can create any number of rules that you want and define properties based on conditions. That's creation rules, okay? I've explained what is copy user attribute. I've also explained what is creation rules. Okay? So using one template, you'll be able to create accounts in multiple departments based on rules that you have defined here. This is what I call a smart provisioning logic. Now, a template for the HR and a template for the admin. Now, how are you going to hide certain things from the HR? You do not want your HR to see what's the user's password. You do not want them to see what is the group, what are the groups associated for the user. You don't want that. Even though this is template, you don't want that. So you go to enable drag and drop. You can add, remove, make silently active. You can edit, change the label, do anything that you want with the template, and that's using the enable drag and drop option. So if you delete, let's say the title field, any field that you delete will be placed in the field tray that you see on the left pane. And if you want to bring it back, just drag and drop it to the layout. Okay, that's what the template allows you to copy users, allows you to enable, customize the layout so that you can hide certain fields or edit certain fields. And then you have smart logic. Using one template, you'll be able to provision multiple accounts belonging to multiple departments. All right. Now, what is the use of creating a template? Can a template be used only inside of AD Manager? Can I use it anywhere else? Can I integrate it with a HR application? If that's your question, well, the answer is yes. Okay. So this template or this layout will be helpful for you when you actually integrate it with tools like your ITSM tools. Okay, AD Manager Plus integrates with ITSM tools in order to make the life of help desk technicians a lot more easier. So AD Manager Plus integrates with Service Desk, with ServiceNow. That will help you to create accounts, unlock them, enable, disable, delete, reset password, reset your password, add or remove from group, and few of the operations, not from AD Manager Plus, but from the ITSM tools. Now, this is an ITSM tool for managing in Service Desk Plus. Some of you who have joined this webinar are users of Service Desk Plus, I assume. So if your Service Desk technicians want the ability to perform Active Directory operations from their Service Desk console, you can very well integrate Service Desk with AD Manager, after which your Service Desk technicians will be getting these additional Active Directory operations right from their console. So they do not have access to another console. They gain access to the Active Directory operations from within their tool itself. And if you have ServiceNow, the ServiceNow console would have additional Active Directory operations after the tool integrates with AD Manager Plus, right? Apart from the ITSM integrations of AD Manager Plus, apart from integrating with ServiceNow or Service Desk, the tool also can integrate with MS SQL or Oracle databases or even any other HRMS software, and then can retrieve user information and provision accounts. It can even deprovision accounts by integrating with all these platforms. Third topic, another 5 more minutes and I'll be done with my session here. Okay. The first one was about reporting. The second one was about bringing in some sort of standardization using templates. Okay. So the core of my second topic was all about templates and the things that you can achieve with a template, be it for creating accounts, be it for modifying accounts or deleting accounts. You can use a template, and you can very well apply the same principle when you integrate with another HRMS tool. Okay. The third topic for my session is about automation. And if you take a look at my screen, I have a GIF, okay, a GIF image that's playing right now. And according to me, this GIF image is an example for automation in theory, okay? Automation in theory is flawless. It works without any glitches, okay? It is perfect automation. You want to know how automation is in real life? That's my next GIF. So this is automation in theory, and this is automation in real, okay? Now, automation in real can have glitches, okay? It can do things that you do not wish, you do not like happening, okay? You do not want an automation to disturb your Office 365 users that are valid users, okay? So all I'm saying is There are chances for an automation could go wrong, and I do not want your business to be affected or your IT productivity to be brought down just because an automation went wrong. So how can we prevent an automation from disrupting your IT infrastructure? How do we stop an automation from disabling or deleting valid accounts, right? Controlled automation is the key. Whenever you automate anything in any tool for that matter, please see whether you'll be able to control the automation. You as an administrator should have the kill switch in hand. That's all I'm saying, okay? Now, what are the things that you can automate with AD Manager Plus? All right, let me take you to the tool itself. The automation tab. You go to the automation tab. There are certain things that you can automate. Let me quickly explain those, right? Automation. Well, there are at least 20 or 30 things that you can automate with AD Manager Plus for users, for groups, for contacts, but I'm not diving into the details of everything. The first thing that you can automate is automate AD user provisioning, not just in Active Directory, but also in Office 365, Exchange, and G Suite, if you have all these platforms, okay? The second thing is you can automate the process of group membership management based on if conditions, okay? And according to the example, the automation can read information off from a CSV file or a SQL database or an Oracle database or another tool for that matter, and read the title of the user account, and depending on the title, which is the if condition, it can perform an operation that you want, and the object gets modified in Active Directory. This is the second example. And the third example, which I want every organization to follow, which for the reason it's highly effective, is Active Directory cleanup and also Office 365 cleanup. At least once in every 90 days, your AD and Office 365 infrastructure has to be cleaned up, okay? So the automation module inside of AD Manager Plus can scan your AD and Office 365 infrastructure, find out inactive users, according to this example, disable those users, move them to a separate OU, let's name it the disabled users OU, and then probably wait for, let's say, 365 days. And if the users are not showing up, if the users are not becoming active, they are still in an inactive state, the user's account can be deleted in AD. The Office 365 account can be deprovisioned and the license can be revoked. And if you have an Exchange mailbox, you can even delete the mailbox as well after waiting for 365 days. You can even customize the actions, right? Now, how do you do that? Go to the automation tab, click on automation, okay? And you just go to create new automation. If you're trying to create an automation for user provisioning, the category of automation should be user automation. And the task that you'll have to select is create users. However, you can perform n number of actions. You can see right here, right from AD to Exchange to Office 365. If you're willing to create users, let's say create users, and let's say I already have a template with the rules in place. So I'm going to do this user creation -admin template. I have all the rules in place. And I want the source to be a SQL server, okay, or a HRMS tool like Zoho People or Altipro or Bamboo HR. Whereas I have all the new hire information there. So I integrate AD Manager Plus with any of these platforms and even more just by selecting the source, okay? I select MS SQL as the source, and I've already selected my template, and I want the application to run every Monday morning, okay? Every Monday morning, let's say at 9 o'clock, at 9 o'clock, and then go to the selected SQL server to the right table and see whether you have any new entries or any new users to be created. Use the template and the logic and then provision the accounts, right? Now, if I want to be notified soon after the accounts are created with their passwords and everything, I just enable the notification. I can select the notification template as well if I want to be notified. Now, this is okay for user creation, but what if you want to be notified first and then you decide whether the account should be created in the platforms or not. So this is what I call as controlling an automation. So if you select the checkbox right here in an automation, which is nothing but the business workflow, the automation, if you say, if the automation finds 5 new users to be created, the automation will look at all those, will create all those users, will create just the framework for those users and send the list of users to be created to you only after you approve the workflow raised by the automation. The application will provision accounts in AD in Office 365. So you basically decide whether to accept the request or reject the request, or even modify and then proceed with the request. Okay. So this checkbox is the kill switch that I was referring to. If you enable the checkbox, the automation will only raise a request to you with all the user accounts that are about to be created. If the checkbox is unchecked, the automation will directly provision accounts, right? I would suggest that you use this checkbox whenever you have disable or delete actions included in the automation piece, right? And for any automation, if you need to know the history of an automation, if you need to know what stage that the automation is at right now, you also have reports for that, okay? So we will be able to create new automation, control it, and also understand where the automation exactly is at a point in time. My last point, okay? My last point for this session. All right, so we've covered cleanup. I've already shown you how to schedule an automation, how to run and all that stuff. All right, my last topic is about delegation. Okay. Now, if I go to the delegation tab right here, I have something called roles in AD Manager Plus. I have a simple role such as create users, or a more powerful role or a supreme role I call the super admin. Okay. Now these roles are nothing to do with your Active Directory permissions. Please bear this in mind. You're not adding a user to a group. You're not adding a user to an Office 365 role. You're not vesting direct permissions for the user. All you're doing here is you are creating custom roles. Let me actually open up a role right here. You see this? I have a role called HR-user creation. So if you open up the role, a role will have a bunch of check boxes, okay? Easily understandable check boxes. And the check boxes are nothing but action items that you can delegate to your users. You see this? Okay. The HR user creation role has a bunch of check boxes right here. Okay. So create users, reset password, modify exchange. And if you want Office 365, yes, we have Office 365 actions that you can delegate. If you want administration capabilities to be delegated, yes, you can even do that. If you want the role to have access to certain reports in AD Manager, yes, you just go ahead and enable checkbox. But for this example, please note that I've just enabled one checkbox in this role, and that checkbox is create single user. And I've enabled this checkbox for this role called HR user creation. And this role, what I've done to this role is, if you go back to the delegation tab, I'll show you something. I have mapped the HR user creation role that I've created to an account in my AD called HR. Okay, this is the name of the user is HR, and I've mapped a role called HR-user creation. Now I'll show you something here. Okay, this is the Active Directory user to which I've mapped a role. But if you take a look at the property of the HR, if I open up HR, if you go to the member of, you don't see any other group other than domain users. Okay, which means this is a very basic user, a very basic account. Now what I'm about to do here is I have added the user as a technician in AD Manager Plus. You go to add new technician and you add the user. While adding the user as technician, you map a role. Okay. Now I've logged in as the admin. You see that I've logged in as the admin. So I'm going to sign out and I'm going to log in as the HR with the user creation role. Okay. HR. I've logged in with my password. Please note this is my Windows username and password for the Active Directory account. This is not an application account. So I'm performing in a Windows authentication here. So I'm switching from AD Manager plus authentication to vcorp, which is my domain. And then I hit login, okay, using my Active Directory credentials. Now you would see a world of a difference here. You do not have the reporting tab. You do not have automation, Office 365 backup, nothing. You just have the checkbox that was enabled in the role, which is create single user. And I have now logged in as the HR, not as the admin, but as the HR. Okay. Now I'm just going to open up this role and see what it can do with this. Okay. Now please be with me. I'm going to create 2 users here. You see this? I don't have any other tab in this template. I don't even have the ability to switch templates because my administrator has restricted me for all those actions, okay? So I just have access to 1 template, and inside the template, I only see 3 fields: first name, last name, and title, okay? I do not even know what the password is. Yeah. So I'm just going to create this here. Let's do this. Virtual, okay, user 1. So the first name of the user is virtual and the last name is user 1. Remember I told you about the templates and the rules that you can configure in the template. So that's the trick, okay? So now I'm going to create 2 users, an IT admin and an IT technician. Let's create an IT technician first. So I'm going to select the title for this user as IT technician, okay? I've just typed the first name, last name, and the title here, and I hit create. Now, when I hit create, it looks like the account is created, okay? Virtual user 1 is created, and I do not know what the password is. Let's see whether the account is created in Active Directory in Office 365. So I open up my Active Directory, okay? I just do a quick refresh. Let's do this refresh. Oops. Okay, where's refresh? Okay, refresh. I'm looking for virtual user 1. There you go, virtual user 1. The title is again IT technician. So when I open up a technician, I have not just the first name, last name, and the title, but I also have the other attributes that I want. Okay, I have a logon name. I even have the group membership defined for the user account. And if I go to the organization tab, I even have my job title, my manager attribute, everything pre-populated. Okay, all that was based on the template that my administrator assigned to my role. So now I have the IT technician. What I'm about to do now is I'm about to create, using the same template, I'm about to create another user. Let me quickly do this. virtual virtual user 2. Okay. Now for this user, I'm not going to use the title as technician. I'd like the title to be admin, IT admin. I hit create. And let's wait for a couple of seconds. Successfully created the user, virtual user 2 in the same OU. Again, I go, I do a quick refresh. So when I see virtual user 2, virtual user 1, virtual user 2, right here, okay? Virtual user 2, I open up the user's property. I see everything pre-populated. I'm just going to have a look at the groups right here. Since I selected the title as IT admin, I see all the admin groups added to this user. Again, one template doing multiple things for me. Okay. And if I need to know the actions done by my account, I just hit sign out. I'm trying to audit my technicians now, okay? As an administrator, I'm logging in as an administrator. So I log in. After I log into the tool, I'm trying to find out, did my HR create any user accounts today? I'm trying to find out the user information from an auditing standpoint. So I just go to delegation and I have something called audit report right here. I go to audit report and it looks like, okay, let's wait for the report to complete. And it looks like my HR had created a single user today. I see the date as 21 and the name of the user was virtual user 2. And the account, another user was also created, which is virtual user 1. And if I'd like to know the properties of the user account, I just hit details. Okay, there you go. So one console helping you manage, report, delegate, as well as automate things in your infrastructure. Okay, so that's pretty much about it. So we saw 4 things in my session: reporting, how do you bring in standardization, automation, how do you automate certain things, and also how do you perform a highly non-intrusive delegation model and getting things done and all at the same time auditing actions. My next session is going to be handled by my colleague Sharda, where she'll be talking about password best practices and how do you implement a secure authentication mechanism for your users. Over to you, Sharda. I'm just going to pause for a quick second here. And if you want to know more about the application that we just discussed, the application AD Manager Plus is going to be just one of the modules of a larger suite called AD 360, Active Directory 360. That's our IAM suite. I talked about the AD Manager Plus module, and Sharda here is to talk about the AD Self-Service module, which is again part of AD 360, right? Again, you can quickly note my email address if you want, or if you want to get in touch with me via LinkedIn, you can always search for my first name, Vivin, and probably my last name, Satyan, and you'll be able to find me there. All right, let's quickly pass my session over to Sharda.